All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 6, or I should say episode 5, in fact. Yeah, what am I saying? I'm definitely skipping ahead here of the Tech Summit podcast. And I am your host, Francisco, or also known as Tech Summit. And today's episode is really going to be all about pretty much about the current state of Windows handhelds. So I was actually sent a review unit by Ambernick of their Win 600, which I was planning on buying. And I definitely had my hopes up for this device before I received it. I thought that it would end up being a better performer than what it was, so it was definitely a shame to see what it ended up becoming. Now, granted, my full review of this device is not out yet. It's going to be out in October, most likely in the very first week of October, since I still have a lot of testing to do with it. But there is still a lot to dig into. Now, granted, I haven't tried out SteamOS, and I haven't tried out Batocera either. I have stuck strictly to Windows 10. I haven't even upgraded to Windows 11 yet. So the most that I might do when it comes to the operating system is maybe just upgrade it to Windows 11 at the most. I don't think that I'm going to dabble with SteamOS or Batocera, since I really want to get the most out of this device. So this device in particular, please excuse me there, but this device in particular is actually running an AMD 3050E CPU. It's running on Radeon 3 graphics. It's running on 16 gigabytes of RAM, and this one actually comes with a 1 terabyte M.2 SSD, which is pretty impressive. Like you would think, okay, well this is actually quite a bit. However, the CPU does bottleneck when it comes to a lot of things here. When it comes to a lot of not only current generation games, but we're talking about also games that came out for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, so games from that generation. It will bottleneck, and most of the time, most of those games won't run very well. And even then, games from the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era are still going to be somewhat of a gamble or a hit or miss, whether or not it's going to run properly or not. But what I can say is what games I have tested so far. But before anything, this device right here costs $474 essentially, or $475. And this device right here is definitely more expensive than the baseline Steam Deck. And the baseline Steam Deck, the only thing that it has going against it really is just the low amount of storage. We can upgrade that very easily with a 512 gigabyte micro SD card, since the Steam Deck actually has a micro SD card. This device does not. And you can upgrade the storage for pretty cheap. Like, you do not have to spend that much money on upgrading your storage. So if storage is an issue, quite frankly, the Steam Deck is like one of the best options out here. And unfortunately, in terms of performance, even at that $400 price point, it does pretty much trump the Win 600 based off of my own testing so far, that is. Now, I would like to continue to do some tweaking and some things here and there just to see how much more I can squeeze out of this device. But my main issue with it is ultimately still going to be in the performance so far. I actually like pretty much everything else about it. Like, the buttons are great, the thumbsticks are workable, the shoulder buttons are definitely pretty good on this, actually. Like, they did a very good job with the buttons. The design, the ergonomics for it are also pretty good, and the display, it's pretty nice as well. I really don't have a lot of complaints when it comes to the actual design and the hardware itself, quite honestly. And I have noticed that a lot of Windows handhelds are definitely trying to go in that direction where they're just smaller than the Steam Deck, which I very much appreciate. I am in the market for a device that is just like that. I want what is essentially a Steam Deck or something as powerful as a Steam Deck, but way smaller so that it's actually more portable for me. I would not consider the Steam Deck to be a very portable device. Certainly not pocketable, but that goes without saying. But now when it comes to the overall girth, the overall size of the Steam Deck, we're dealing with quite the hefty package here, which is why I do not tend to travel with the Steam Deck. I actually don't really travel with any Windows handhelds, and I actually technically own three, if you want to count the Steam Deck. I own the Win 600 over here as well, and I own the GPD Win 3, which is probably my favorite one of the bunch. I have upgraded that one to Windows 11, and it is still performing quite nicely, quite well, but that device was maybe around $1,300 versus something like this that is close to $500 or closer to $500. So the price differences and obviously the differences in performance are going to be extremely apparent. They're going to be night and day when it comes to what they can accomplish. And with that said, I'm definitely excited to seeing the GPD Win 4 because that device does look like a PSP that runs Windows, and obviously it is going to be more powerful than the GPD Win 3, so I do look forward to seeing that. But most importantly, I actually have my eyes set on the Aya Neo Air because it's got an OLED screen. It is actually smaller than this device right here, than the Win 600, and it does have some hardware changes to it that does make it a better value in my opinion, such as, for example, the thumbsticks positioning and that kind of thing. But the Aya Neo Air is a device that I will most likely end up investing into, not just to review on the main channel, but also because it just seems to be a combination of everything that I have wanted, because from everything that I have seen so far, it can run quite a lot of games, and that is very impressive. I mean, it can run games from this generation, from last generation as well. So we're talking about PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, and it can still run those games just fine, which is exactly what I'm looking for, while still keeping a very small form factor. I really don't mind a loud fan on it as long as I can actually play. Now, granted, battery life on these devices is absolutely atrocious. Like, we're talking about basically 1 hour of playtime when it comes to a good chunk of games for a lot of these devices. And there isn't really too much that can be done to fix that right now. Unless you want something like the Steam Deck, which is a lot chunkier. It does have a bigger battery, but it is way chunkier. So, you know, there are some compromises to be made here and there. But ultimately, I think that a lot of these companies are still going to have to compete pretty hard against each other. So that we could start seeing even more affordable prices coming from these Windows handhelds. Like, for example, I think that this device, the Win 600, should be cheaper. I think that $474 for it is maybe just a bit too much for it. I think that it should be probably around $350, just considering that it's not as powerful as a Steam Deck, and, well, it doesn't really have the same build quality. It doesn't have the same quality display. Same resolution, but not the same quality display. The thumbsticks are still fairly generic on it. Like, there are many things about it that can certainly be improved with a future iteration. But I want to say that I'm very glad that Ambernick made that jump into Windows handhelds, and I hope that more companies continue to make that jump into Windows handhelds so that we can see more competition, and so that we can see a lot more of these thrive, and so that we can actually start seeing a lot more options. Because right now, even though we're seeing so many companies coming out with all of these Windows handhelds, there still aren't really that many options, especially because a lot of these are still being worked on. Like they have been announced, but they're not really ready for sale. For example, like something like the Aya Neo Air or the Iron Loki, for example, which at the moment there does appear to be some kind of disaster going on when it comes to the Loki at the moment. So we don't really know when we're going to see the Loki. So I've actually decided to push aside my pre-order for that. I decided that I'm not going to pre-order the Loki anytime soon. And that instead I'm going to set my eyes on the Aya Neo Air or the Aya Neo Air Pro, I believe. I'm going to have to take another look at it, but so far it's looking pretty damn sweet, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But yeah, the current state of Windows handhelds does appear to be still like it is in its infancy, and we can definitely tell that because a lot of them can still come off as being a little bit janky. I mean, like just like not too long ago, even just last year, for example, if you wanted to get a Windows handheld, that was going to cost you more than $1,000 easily. And if you were able to find one under $1,000, then it must have been on sale or something like that. But for the most part, like pricing has always been an issue, which is why so many people that would be interested in something like the Steam Deck have had to look away from devices like this because it is pretty difficult to justify. I mean, do I get myself a laptop that can still play all of these games that I'm trying to play, but that makes it way easier for me to get work done on? Or should I just get this handheld that costs the same or probably more than said laptop and be limited by what I can do? Basically, only be able to play games with it. And as cool as it sounds, I know that a lot of people can't really justify that kind of purchase, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. That's really understandable, because it's true. I mean, it is something that has been a problem for a long time that is finally now being addressed in 2022, I want to say. I mean, the Steam Deck made rounds. It has been an overall success in the market. Even though it's not technically a Windows handheld, it is a Linux handheld, but you can install Windows on the Steam Deck if you want to. But I am throwing it in there because you can still play PC games on it. I mean, that is the entire point of the Steam Deck, so you can play Steam games on it. And you can also do a ton of emulation. Now, personally, I'm not really that interested in emulation when it comes to a lot of these Windows handhelds. I prefer to leave emulation for Android just because I'm more interested in seeing what can be done on the Android side of things. Because on Windows, I know that you can get better emulators and that kind of thing, but I'm also just a lot more interested in seeing how PC games run, generally speaking. So I'm always going to be on the lookout for that. Now, there's one important point as well that I have kind of neglected to mention here, and it is actually specifically about the Win 600 right here. Now, again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but Ambernick did send this over to me for review. My review is not out yet. It is going to be out in October. But I think that the Ambernick Win 600 is a blessing in disguise because a lot of people, in a way, well, not a lot of people, but a lot of other companies do try to compete, specifically with Ambernick in particular. Ambernick is more so like the premium brand that maybe underperforms in terms of performance, but you do get a better build and better buttons and that kind of thing. While with other companies, you get better performance at a cheaper price, but they still try their best to match what Ambernick offers. At the very least, that's how I've seen it. And the fact that Ambernick released this device, even though it's not perfect, it's not really so far what I would personally want. I think that a lot of companies are actually going to start stepping up. Like Palkity, I expect them to start coming up with a Windows handheld as well. Um, Retroid probably is another company that might actually step into that realm, even though they just very recently released the Retroid Pocket 3, which is actually a really cool device, running you only at 120 bucks. I'm very curious to see what they can accomplish, honestly. But again, like the fact that Ambernick released the Win 600 should prompt a lot of other companies to want to compete, because right now this product is not perfect, and this is the perfect opportunity for them to start jumping in and adding their own 2 cents. Now, granted, don't necessarily rush a product, because when you rush a product, you usually will end up with a pretty bad product, and probably with a lot of returns. It's usually not worth it in the long run. Hence why something like the Ambernick Win 600 first released with only 8 gigabytes of RAM, and you can only get 16 gigabytes on this if you invest in the Blue model, which just released recently. And that's the only one that comes with 16 gigs. Now, you can upgrade it on other models if you want, but if you wanted it from the factory, maybe you're not too tech savvy yourself, even though swapping out RAM is actually pretty easy. Still, that option is available to you. But again, like if you just wanted it from the factory, you're kind of stuck with the blue one right now. And that's just something that they added later on. And obviously, it's got a higher price than the rest of the other units. So I think that it is really just about time that we start seeing a lot more. I can predict, I can go ahead and just predict that more announcements are on their way from a lot of these other companies, most likely for handhelds like this. Because the thing is, when the Odin came out, a lot of other companies were like, "Holy crap, we have to make something that's like the Odin now for Android." So on the Android side, and the Android and Odin was something that was probably on their radar first, if anything. So they're probably going to prioritize Android performance right now on their devices, but I expect them to jump on the bandwagon for Windows, and I really hope that they do. Sooner rather than later, because I'm dying to see what the rest of the market has. I mean, Aya, up until recently, with the Aya Neo Air, had virtually all of their products set at over $1,000, which was just unattainable for the vast majority of people. It was unattainable for me. I mean, I could only choose one Windows handheld, and I ended up going with the GPD Win 3, which I don't regret, but sometimes I do wish that I had a device that was actually shaped a lot more like this. So something like the Ambernick Win 600, but with the guts of the GPD Win 3 or the GPD Win 4, which should be coming out at some point, is just something that I dream of. And right now, it does look like the Aya Neo Air, the Aya Neo Air Pro are the only ones that are offering what I'm looking for at the moment, which is kind of disappointing, but it is nice that there is at least a product out there that does exist that offers what I'm looking for. Now, with that said, thank you so much for watching tonight's episode of the Tech Summit podcast. Tonight's episode does come out a little bit later than usual because now I am back to working at my job. So these episodes are going to be coming out closer to nighttime, but they should still be releasing on Fridays as per usual. So thank you so much for watching, of course, all the way up until the very end. And I do have the main channel where I'm going to be reviewing the Win 600 in due time. Again, that review should come out at the very beginning of October. And I do have other social media as well, like if you want to find me on Twitch to ask any questions live, or if you want to find me on Instagram as well. But I do have other channels too, such as my main channel, like I just mentioned, and my vlogging channel where I post to that one just whenever I have an idea or I feel like it. So, yeah, I mean, I would very much appreciate your following wherever you go. Now, with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Have a good night.